Compared to the US, Asia and Europe, Australia has been relatively slow to take full advantage of the business opportunities that e-commerce represents. But more and more Australians are searching and buying online. This year, Australians will spend around $24 billion online, with up to 40% of this spent overseas. That compares to just 10% of US online spend that goes offshore. Joining us now is John Debrincat from e-commerce solutions company eCorner. Mr. Debrincat, look, thanks very much for your time. Just, I suppose, to start with, why are Australian companies dragging their feet when it comes to e-commerce?
It's a little bit historical in terms of its process. Australia's been a little behind the eight ball from an infrastructure point of view in terms of broadband network capability in Australia. Really, to build and grow e-commerce, you need a good broadband capability. People need to be able to get online, search and browse, especially rich content like images, video and other media. So,
will the NBN, do you think, the proposed NBN, help to solve some of those problems?
The NBN is a good initiative from the industry's perspective and from my perspective. As it grows, it will provide more capability for individuals, and especially out in regional Australia, to get access to broadband internet, and that will help them be able to grow their capability to actually go search and buy for products online. But also it'll actually help a lot of other services, more like health and even e-government, which will be great.
What about some of the issues? I mean, how difficult or costly, if you like, is it to set up an online store?
It's not costly at all. I mean, in the past there was a lot of smoke and mirrors, I guess, around the whole internet thing and building a website and building an online store. But the reality is that the technology is not the issue. Internet business is still a business, and so you need to treat the technology like a tool. Retailers get their heads around things like point-of-sale systems and FPOS, and they're pretty complicated, but they don't. It doesn't stop them starting a retail store.
Do you have any, I suppose, examples of businesses that have, I suppose, seen a marked improvement in any aspect when they've set up an e-option?
Oh, look, absolutely. I mean, there's some businesses out there that have just grown tremendously over the last few years. There's just so many more people searching and buying online. So, we've seen companies growing like GetPrice, for example, who are an online price comparison company. I mean, their growth has been phenomenal over the last few years, growing by hundreds of %. And that's driven small businesses to be able to get into the act as well. So, companies like Urban Baby, who are a couple of mums who started a business in their kitchen and now run one of Australia's largest baby goods product companies online, and it's only been a few years since they started that. We have other companies like Teleflora, which is one of Australia's floral flower companies, and they're predominantly online. They've been growing fantastically. They deliver through local florists, and their business model wouldn't have grown the way it is without the online channel.
What about social media? There seems to be this explosion, if you like, of different avenues of social media and the importance it plays. Is that something that companies can rely on, do you think, in terms of promotion and so forth?
Absolutely. Social media is here to stay. I mean, it's not something that's a passing fad and it's just going to go away. So, especially in the generational changes, you get younger generations using social networks like Facebook and Twitter to communicate amongst themselves, to understand what they're doing, remotely, and that's driving buyer process. So, people are getting hints from social media. They're looking for hints from social media. So, the pillar of social media is part of marketing, and that's what it is. It's part of the marketing process. That pillar of social media is going to become far more important as we go forward than even it is today.
What about some of the concerns people have in terms of fraud, security when it comes to online? I mean, how onerous are the legal obligations there, and is it something people do need to be concerned about, or at least is it less of a worry?
People need to be aware of it. Business operators, whether they be small or large, need to be aware of the issues of doing business online. Now, the obvious issue is just storing personal data and maybe even financial data for an individual somewhere out in the internet, and you need to know where that is, first of all, and you need to even make sure that you're doing it correctly and safely, and the best way to do that is to use one of the reputable service providers. So, for example, taking credit card payments online, no one should be storing on their own, server somewhere out there in the internet, right? But if they use a provider like PayPal or eWay, which is a great Australian company, then that credit card data is stored and protected by that company's processes, which are in tune with what the banks are requiring. There's a thing called PCI compliance, which is the Provider Card Industry Association. So all the card providers got together and set a set of rules. They said if you follow these rules, then you're going to be best practice in terms of storing and looking after people's financial data. So as long as the organisation you're using to run your website is aware of that PCI compliance and abides by it, then you'll be safe.
All right, Mr. Debrincat, thanks very much for coming. Do appreciate it.
Thank you.
And that is all for now. Thanks very much for your company.